Okay, we are live. Dr. Marizelle Arce, welcome to the Terrain Theory Podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. We want to know a little bit about you and your work.
Okay, so I actually am a naturopathic doctor, although I practice as a naturopath. And there's a distinction because naturopaths were the first things that were essentially created back in the late 1800s. Um, I actually went to med school for a little while because since I was very little, as cliche as it sounds, I wanted to be a doctor. I was the little kid that carried around band-aids and bandages. And if you had a problem, I'd make a potion for you. So I was really big into helping people, healing people, things like that. And I always thought, you're brought up in an environment where it's like the doctor was the end all be all of medicine, right? And lo and behold, as you get older, you're going, well, not really, but that's what I wanted to do. So I wound up, driving myself through all my schooling, geared myself towards going to med school. And I was disheartened by the way regular med school was. So I wound up finding naturopathic medical school and I went through there. I can't say it was that much different in the way it's structured than regular med school. So I had to find my own voice, find my own uniqueness in naturopathic school. So I did a lot of outside studying. I read a lot of books outside of school. I did a lot of seminars, various places in the United States to go to. And I was actually drawn to a lot of unique ways of practicing, which I later found out was way that naturopaths practiced. But I do have to attribute a lot of my scientific knowledge to going to the medical school, to the naturopathic medical school, because it really dug into, I got to see the side of anatomy, physiology, biochemistry, like real deep into that, where the more a traditional naturopath doesn't dive that deep into it currently. Um, and then I was in school again. Naturopathic school was again very medically oriented, germ theory oriented, which I'm not a subscriber to. I never really felt that the whole manifestation of disease, even though naturopathic school is telling you the root and cause, that's their foundation. But to me, when we looked at, let's say, for as simple as it is, a strep throat infection, you're in naturopathic school going, the root cause is a streptococcus, and I'm going saying, they go, okay, if streptococcus is the root cause, then how are we different than regular med school, right? So to me, it was more like I needed to go a little deeper than that, and it happened to be that I also became a rep to a European biological company called Pleomorphic Sanum. It's called Pleosanum here in the United States, and it was called Sanum Cal in Europe, particularly Germany and Switzerland. So I was like, wow, this was an amazing company. I learned about Enderline, and I happened to fall upon another book called Politics and Healing, which they talked about also, I think Gaston Nisane. So it was like at the moment I have very synchronistic times in my life where everything just floods me with a particular topic, and it was the sign for me to be like, this is where I want to go to, this is how I will be practicing. And so I became an advocate for the company, meaning I was hired by them and I was called a medical liaison, where I taught students and doctors and nurses, how to use the products from this company, which again was the basis of, not the germ theory. It was more of understanding pleomorphism, and that your body's environment is what changes these endogenous and exogenous microorganisms, super microorganisms called microzymas, Becham's words. And to me, that was it. That was how I was like, wow, this is it. This is the basis. This is the foundation of health. Nutrition, toxins, getting those microzymas to work, in the way they should be, and not making them angry to clean up all the mess that we make, actually, not they make. They don't make any messes. um, so yeah, so that's where I came from, and it was just throughout the years of practicing. I graduated in 2007 from the naturopathic school. I established my practice. I incorporated different things. I really liked applied kinesiology that was made by George Goodhart, so I became certified in that. I use the acoustic cardiograph, which was designed by Royal Lee from the company of Standard Process. I really like that because it was all about really understanding the dynamics of the body, using the heart. Because there was one saying that he had that really struck through true to me, was that the body's a watch. Like there's all these different parts, and you can't pinpoint one part that's more important than the other. They're all working together, right? So to me, that struck true to me, because the idea that we have specialization in medicine, and you have a problem in one location, doesn't mean all the other locations in the body are not being affected or affecting it. So I really like that machine, because people got to see how, tied together all the different, like, they come in and they have a thyroid problem. It's not just your thyroid, just because the medical doctor says it's a thyroid. It's so many different things that could be playing off of, or that the thyroid is contributing to. May not even be the starting point of the problem. So, and then I also use a regulation thermography, which is different than the digital thermography. Again, something that really shows people the holism of the body. And then I have a dark field. Well, I have a compound microscope, but predominantly use it as a dark field microscope, or the contrast. To see people, to have people engage with, again, what's going on in their body. All these different equipment, though, as I know it, and as I've learned to come to know, is that there's still, you take it with a grain of salt, because as I said at the end of COVID in one of my modules that I did, you'll never really know exactly how the body works, because there's so many different things happening, that science can't measure, our eyes can't measure, our hands, all our five senses can't measure. And so I always tell people, you can look at these things, but at the end of the day, they can change in an instant. Like, you could drink a glass of water and dynamics will change. You could take deep breaths and meditate, things will change. Even looking at the microscope, this is not a true format of exactly what's going on in the body, because we're taking that blood out, and it's being changed by the air and by the slide and things like that. So I never hold 100% truth from any of the things I do. It's essentially how I practice is, um, what the person tells me, what their body's telling me when they come in, all the different aspects of what my eyes can see and feel and touch, and even, what my intuition tells me, things like that. So that's what I do, and I love what I do, and I read books, and endless books about it. I am actually a collector of antiquarian material, so I have, to my husband's dismay, a stack here and there, and then bookshelves of books that are, written older than 1800s, mid 1800s, anything that I can grab onto that has not been adulterated by pharmaceutical mentality or germ theory mentality. um, you know I really like to see what the thoughts were, and the beliefs were, and the aspects of medicine, in not only in the North American culture, but I like anything that comes from anywhere, because my background is anthropology. So um, I have a bachelor's in anthropology and cultural and social anthropology, with a concentration of medicinal and nutritional anthropology. So to me, the way people, every culture sees medicine and food and their bodies is really, really interesting to me, because it gives me, again, a bigger, it just keeps broadening my scope of understanding, and that helps me with patients from all avenues, different issues, different ethnicities, different cultures, different beliefs, that all plays a role on how our body works and how our mind is actually influencing our body. So I want to make sure that I constantly add to my mental collection of understanding of how the body and the mind works.
There's a real humility with which you seem to approach your craft, your profession, and it stands in contrast with what I see in many like allopathic practitioners, and that is uh and almost an obligation to give a definitive answer when a patient comes in, rather than saying, well, we don't know. I mean, even your approach to things like uh, blood tests and maybe like food allergies, like that gives you some information of a specific moment in time, but it's not the definition of you, and it might not paint the full picture. And in fact, it might not paint the picture of who you will be tomorrow or the next day or the next day. And I really appreciate that humility with which you are approaching your profession and craft. And I kind of wish that others would adopt it in this space.
Yeah, no, it's I've I think Socrates is the one that says the more you know, the more you think you know, you don't. And every time I get a new book, that's my obsession. That's why I research. The more I realize that I'm like, oh, I figured it out, and it's no, you didn't, because then you have this aspect, and it's really enlightening, and like you said, very humbling. And when even someone, people express to me like they want to understand how to not believe in the germ theory, and they want an alternative, definitive answer, and there's no such thing, because we have yet, just like, the we've only really explored 30-40% of this planet. We What do we know right now of our bodies, of our engagement with the environment, of our engagement with the energy around us, of our engagement with the stars and the sun and the cloud, like there's just so much. And uh, when you keep going to that, when you keep going, oh, there's so much more, you can never say, okay, this is the reason. And I will never say this is the reason, like, even though my husband hates it when I go, this is the, when something burns or cracks, I'll be like, this is well, so you could be definitive on that, but you can't be definitive on why someone has a rat. you know?
As a student of old texts, like you were mentioning, do you feel that there was a time in, we'll call it the distant past, where people did have a finer tuned sense of how we fit into this whole mysterious place? As relates to the stars and the moon and the sun and all.
Sure. I think they had a better understanding because they weren't definitive, because they understood the complexity of their existence, right? You look at natives, native North Americans, or you look at aboriginals from Australia or South Americans, wherever you go, Africa. They understood that it was so much that they didn't want to define it, because if they defined it, then they would be something missed,
Yeah.
right? Something lost. The beauty of the interaction, and the beauty of, whatever it is that created us, or nature, mother nature, or the great spirit, or the food you eat and the energy from the food that you eat. Or So I feel like they had a better understanding because they didn't limit themselves to a definition, they didn't limit themselves to a label.
Yeah.
And when I studied shamanism, and I mean the shamanism of, like, the cultures from Africa and South America and things like that, um, people did what they did. They knew that they were part of nature, and the shaman was always the one that actually made sure that, even the leaf that they touched and brushed up against would have a ripple effect. That the animal that they killed to eat had have a ripple effect. And that, even, if the sun was looking redder, or the moon didn't come out, that, it was just a new moon and there was no moon in the sky, that these will all have effects. And so if someone came with some issue, the shaman would explain, it was, we have to take into account, it's the crops didn't grow, or we didn't kill this particular, or you ate a particular part of an animal that you shouldn't, like, all these different things. And I think that appreciation of how much stimulus, all the different things that, engage with us, are essentially important to take in as an aspect of influence. And I think that's where we lost that, when the more we inculcated ourselves to, defining every aspect and labeling everything, we lost the understanding of that. And now we're stuck in a place where
Mm.
we have to we have to go back to that, because it's like, oh my God, a rash. It's like, but I don't understand. This is the way you do it. This is the cream you put on it. It's why isn't it getting better? And it's like, well, because we got to look at every aspect, like, and that it seems like it's a new thing for a lot of people when in fact it's a very old thing.
Yeah, it's like we have to unlearn how we learn. Right. One of my favorite quotes these days, and I hear Tom Cowan trot this one out often, is it's not what you don't know that gets you into trouble, it's what you know for sure that just ain't so.
That exactly. It's exactly. Yeah, no, Tom Cowan has a lot of those beautiful little sayings,
He
and you're
collects
like,
them. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Dr. Maury, when you were in allopathic medical school, I'm going to make an assumption. I'm just actually ask for clarification.
Sure.
They don't teach pleomorphism or the microzyma, do they?
Oh God, no. Oh God,
So
that's no.
why is that? Why is that not taught? What is the controversy here? Why is like modern science not hip to that? What's the
Ooh,
difference?
I mean, we're looking at history, right? So we could go back to Béchamp and Pasteur, right? And so all the works of Béchamp have been thrown to the wayside, thrown in the garbage, essentially. And it was really only people who really subscribe, like the hygienists and the naturopaths and some of the early chiropractors, and the people who really kind of just still stuck to the idea of the environment engaging with us, that really followed that. But the moment that we started to have medical men, right, people who you had medical societies in Europe, and then when medicine was brought over here, you had different types of medical schools, but the medical schools didn't subscribe to that, and that whole idea was thrown out. And then when it was reinvigorated by using the dark field microscope by many different early microscopists, like Enderlein again, I think he was in like the early 1930s. um, it was woo woo. It was woo woo because it was like, oh, you're just seeing, just like we claim virologists are seeing artifacts in EM. They were claiming, oh, no, it's just stuff. Like that has nothing to do with anything. Like, that's your body moving or whatever. And it doesn't, because of the germs, really because of the germ theory. The germ theory gives answers. Remember that whole definitive thing we just talked about. So when the medical men and the medical schools and the guys of university became the doctors, and you know bogarted the whole medical system, took away midwives and nurses and things like that. The germ idea is what allowed them to give you the definitive answer of problems. So microzymas would have murky, made that water murky,
Hmm.
made questions come back. And I feel like that, plus on top of that, when there was always a selling, pharmaceutical companies may not have existed in the way they exist now back then, but there's definitely a dispensing of sulfa medicines and mercury based medicines. And again, those companies or institutions essentially were the ones that made sure that the germ theory was stuck to, because then you can't sell a medicine if the answer is iffy. So if it's like, oh, if it's a problem here, take laudanum. If it's a problem, here's an arsenic-based drug.
Hmm.
Yeah, one disease, one cure.
While we're
Correct.
on pleomorphism, you mentioned pleomorphic sanum was a company that you worked for. Is that right?
Yes,
And,
pleosana.
and what sort of products were they offering then?
They're called isopathics. So homeopathics are dilutions to the point where you go past Avogadro's number,
Right.
where there technically is no physical matter left within the molecules of the product.
Right.
Isopathics are, like very, like they're, it's only 2 or 3 time dilutions.
Okay.
And what they do is they would utilize what would be considered an organism, right? So like penicillium or a certain bacteria, or again, another type of fungus or whatever it may be. And they would dilute it slightly down. And you would take this dilution to help the microzymas do their job better in the body. And they usually came in. So
Salud.
So, in just to let you know, in Greek culture, I'm not Greek, my husband's Greek, but in Greek culture, when you are telling the truth, someone sneezes. So, that's kind of funny.
You're on a roll.
I'm on a roll. Um, so, so all these different, you would take them in drops, or you would take them if it was something on your skin, they would make a cream of it or whatever, or they had ampules. But the point being is that it would be working on communicating to the microzymas to facilitate them to do a better job, right?
Hmm.
So that your whatever issue you have wouldn't be, let's say the issue is 5 days long, it would help the microzymas clean up better so that your issue is now 3 days long.
To sort of
So
wake up, to invigorate that process, to wake
right,
it up.
exactly.
Uh,
Along with the fact that you also had to make sure that the avenues of excretion were obviously working too,
right.
because if you're making them work better, it's got to go out somewhere.
Yeah. Right.
Dr. Murray, for the audience member who might be joining us for the first time or recently, how do you define the microzyma and their role?
I i think of them as precursors, like what we define DNA as, almost. Because to me, DNA is still up in the air. As weird as it sounds, I don't. I think also Dr. Cowan says the same thing. Like, what we see DNA as in an EM isn't a definitive as to what DNA really is. And I think the microzymas are more of what we think DNA is, in that they help facilitate cells in our body, along with things outside of our body, to create what they need to create. Basically, the idea of like almost what a stem, like you take a stem cell and it has no direction. The microzyma tells the stem cell, essentially the early cell, okay, you're going to be a heart cell, so this is what you need to do. And it helps it with, once it becomes this heart cell, it helps it do its function inside and outside of the cell. So I call them precursors, and I think they're pre whatever it is that they need to be. So they're either pre helping the cell, or pre bacteria, or pre fungus, or whatever it is that their function is. But without them, our cells don't work. Without them, life doesn't exist.
And they're constantly, the pleomorphism is they're constantly changing form and function based on the needs of the inner terrain, the environment of the inner terrain.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Exactly.
Got it. So, what are some of the ways that you are applying your understanding of the terrain model to your work with your patients?
Well, it's all about, like Mike said, it's unlearning. So it's basically, I have to a person comes in, they have an issue, and first I have to tell them the issue isn't what they think the issue is, right? So we have to go back to that, and a lot of people come in with a diagnosis and a label, a name, a definitive, and we have to unlearn that. And so once we start to unlearn that, then I start to incorporate what it is and tell them that it's their body trying to eliminate something or respond to something, or is telling them something. And in their body, there are things, because again, the grasping of microzymas, I try not to use too many words like pleomorphism, because you'll see the eyes just like, what are you talking about? So I don't use pleomorphism unless it's a person coming in, obviously, that has read a little bit. But I don't use pleomorphism in my words to them, and I don't use microzymas in my word to them. I just say that your body, you have a lot of little microorganisms and a lot of little, I call it like the god spark, like the sparkles, the because when you see in dark field microscope, they sparkle, right? They look like the little stars. um and I say there's unique structures around every cell, and they help the cells do what they need to do. And the basis is to understand that everything that they do to their bodies, their thoughts, the things that touch their skin, the things that they eat, will all have an influence, negative or positive. So we have to make sure that we're contributing to the body's constant flow of excretion and supporting nutrition, right? We don't want to be malnourished. So it's basically just helping people understand that there's no definitive in their diagnosis, and to step away from that diagnosis, because Um, just like in Fight Club, right? Chuck Palahniuk, right? Because you are not your fill in the blank, right? So you are not your Lyme disease. You are not your psoriasis. And that's important because people get wrapped up with that diagnosis, and they they walk around with these labels. It feels like everybody should have, like, the patch is like an idiocracy. Instead of a pharmaceutical company, you should have your diagnoses like all over, right? Because that's what people do. They make their decisions in life now because of their diagnoses. And I want to strip them of that. I want them to identify more with the power that they have the control to not be that. And they aren't that, and that's where how I incorporate it. It's more of throw away all those diagnoses, throw away all those labs, and let's find the balance where you can feel good. And who cares what the numbers on your labs are, and who cares what the diagnoses are? It's about you feeling good and having the structure of your body just constantly flowing, and the dynamic being responsive to the ever changing environment that's inside and outside of you.
You're a new mom. You have a beautiful baby behind you.
Mhm.
What are what are some of the ways that you're applying your understanding of terrain to motherhood?
Oh, so much. I mean, it's because of the fact that I have an understanding of pleomorphism, and the fact that the environment can change my body. I have to be diligent in, not becoming in contact too much with toxins, and making sure I'm as much nourished, if not more nourished than usual, to support the growth of my child, and um I have actually a 4.5-year old, and I got to watch um that belief system flourish in her, where she's 4.5 and she's had one time where she had 2 days of feverishness, and that's it. She hasn't sorry she hasn't had a moment where her body was trying to rebalance itself, I should say, right? And that's important to me. That kind of gives me the thumbs up that I'm kind of doing the right thing. And and I've had many patients with children. I've helped them, get pregnant or had children, or things like that. And seeing the turnaround, seeing the 180 from a child who, from a patient's child who had colds all the time, or constipation all the time, or diarrhea all the time, or whatever rash or whatever it may be, or even attention issues, just completely turn around. Again, gives me the thumbs up, gives me the, what, you're on the right track, because a child's body is so much more influenced by the environment, because they're processing so much faster than us. Their cells are being created so much faster. So, it's they're going to they're a reflection of what you're doing at that moment, because day in and day out is such a new experience. They could wake up and be completely almost different, their body excreting something from the day before.
Well said. So, okay, so you have a 4-year-old, so you're in it. What yeah, I'd love to just dive a little bit more into,
Sure.
like, the details. Like, what are some things that you're always making sure your child has? What are some of the things that you're avoiding? Maybe, like, some of the, what are some of those tips that you might share?
So number one is where I am a Weston A. Price chapter leader, and I've been with Weston A. Price since 2005. I raised goats, actually, when I was going to naturopathic medical school. I raised goats for almost 2 years. I used to wake up 4:30 in the morning and milk them before taking a shower and heading over to school very early in the morning. So I was a raw milk drinker quite early. Raw milk uh, is a non-negotiable. Raw milk is an absolute, and that's from the get-go. The moment that my 4.5-year-old was not breastfeeding, it was a glass of raw milk. Sometimes I threw an egg yolk in there, because that I know that would be like, that's her armor, for the day. That's her when we walk out there and you've got car fumes and chemtrails and all sorts of things. That's her armor. That gives her the probiotics, that gives her all the vitamins that I know of, that helps her go to the bathroom, all those different things. Um, ensuring of obviously that she's growing, ensuring that she's getting the right amount of protein and fats is super important because
Hello.
yes, yes, you're right, absolutely. Um, what we avoid is essentially anything that's really processed. We don't do processed. I mean, you're going to get once in a while the kid that wants to, oh, I want potato chips, and I'll try to get chips from a farm. The Amish make their own potato chips, but if I can't get my hands on it, something that's baked organic, I try to investigate as much as I can all the different companies that make food essentially. But I limit really boxed and canned is not what I go for. We do fresh fruit, farmers markets, farmers that I know. I'm very much into local, limiting all the, getting something from a different country that has to be boxed and shipped and crated and is not really fresh, and we have a garden. Well, we had a garden, it's now the tail end of it, but, um, you know, fresh tomatoes and cucumbers and, you know, fermented veggies. She loves her pickles to get, again, more of her probiotics. So it's really more of just limiting like ultra processed or industrialized processed foods, incorporating more of the naturally processed. So you can't say you don't have processed food because cheese is processed, right?
Right.
So we do a lot of raw cheeses. We do a lot of meat. I make sure that there's organ meats kind of either ground into the ground meat. So the importance is to get a full array constantly, and it doesn't mean every day, right? So we know how 4.5 year olds are. They might not eat. They'll have a piece of cheese, a glass of milk, and be like, "I'm good for today." That's it. So, I know that she loves her milk, and we make the milk. Sometimes we put a little honey in it. Sometimes we put a little it's a company that makes kind of like a coffee alternative because we don't drink coffee in the house. So it's like chicory, roasted chicory and roasted barley, and we put that in the milk, and she thinks she's having coffee milk. So so it's just experiencing food and tastes and flavors that all are easy to digest, and slowly it's just keeping that palate, entertained and opened. And even I like incorporating all sorts of cultural foods. Like I like Indian food. I make some Indian food and Thai food, Vietnamese, Korean. We love our kimchi, and it's just, I think food is a fantastic thing. I think people need to experience more different types of foods, different types of fermented foods, different ways of preparing foods, because there's different ways we can get our nutrition and our nutrients.
And what about the pregnancy window? What were some of the things that you were doing to maintain your health and the baby's health?
Pregnancy was just enormous amounts of raw milk, enormous amounts of fats, enormous amounts of eggs. Traditionally, there's lots of cultures that believed eggs really helped um, with the conception and the development of the child. And we know that eggs have folic acid, and one of the things that pregnant women should be consuming is folic acid, right? It was just an increase of the amount of what I normally eat, right? So instead of just a glass of milk, it was like a quart of milk.
Hmm.
Instead of one egg, it was like three, four, five eggs. I had lots of bacon and lard and beef tallow on, I would fry some potatoes and make French fries with beef tallow. Um, yeah. And it was just basically just making sure again that I was going to the bathroom, evacuating as much as possible, making sure, I was really in tune with energy, making sure I didn't do too much. If I felt like, oh, that today something's going on where my body's using a lot of energy, let me just slow down and breathe and relax and read, maybe. It was keeping the stress really, really low and nourishing myself a lot. And I think a lot of the times we have too much of that, when you're pregnant, go exercise and do and keep going. And your body is making another human being. Like you have to give yourself a little break because of the fact that you need so much. And a lot of the times women come to me, postpartum, and we're talking postpartum like 10, 15 years later, and there's things that need to be rebuilt now because they didn't take it in, but the growing child inside was taking it from them. So a lot of repair has to be done, a lot of renourishment has to be done. And that's what in my mind is always where I want to be the strongest I can be as they grow up. So I had to make sure that I was nourishing myself and nourishing the child at the same time.
Yeah, we don't live in a society that makes it easy for pregnant women to step away and pump the brakes a little bit during that period. We have so many who will work right up until the moment they're giving birth, and they're, working the same long hours, the same sort of grueling tasks. And then even afterwards, we don't really have a great like maternity leave or
No.
paternity leave program in our
Right.
society.
Right. Absolutely. That's a big thing. That was a big thing for us is I wanted my husband to take as much of a break as possible. And that's important because the partner is there to also help, right? So he was doing laundry, he was helping doing all the tasks that I wasn't doing anymore. And you see pictures on Instagram or Facebook or wherever of the man after the birth sleeping, right? And people forget the mental stress that a partner is watching their wife or significant other birthing. The pregnancy at the tail end is stressful, and then the birthing, and then the recuperation. And they always make fun of the guy sleeping
That was
at
me.
the same time, and I'm just like, no, but that's true because he was, he has this tension of when's the baby going to come, and oh, am I going to be prepared, and what are we going to do, what if it happens in the car, like all that stuff. And he needs a break as well. He needs to nourish himself as well, or her. Because it's important that the bonding experience happens, that the renourishment, that the stress relief happens. That's all very important too.
Yeah. Yeah, well said. We certainly need to create better space, I think, in this society around that whole process for the family. Let's shift gears real quick. You mentioned bioresonance on your website. I'd love to learn a little bit more about what that is and how you use it in your practice.
So, just to break down the word for people who don't know what that is. So bio is biological, right? That's life. And resonance is in physics, it's like the vibration. So that could either be sound or light. Every living and inorganic material, everything on this planet essentially has a bioresonance, right? And different fields, different genres call it different things, right? So we have some genres calling it the aura. Some people, physics likes to talk about the vibration because of the electrons spinning. And some people talk about even like the sound, right? That every organ, every system has almost a certain frequency. I think if one were to go into it, Rife was always talking about the different frequencies, right? Different frequencies of organisms. And that's how the machine worked. I do have a Rife, a more newer version of the Rife machine. I don't use it as much as I should, but I should. um, but I how I incorporated it again is to we have a field. We have a field. We have a resonant field. Whether again you believe in auras or electrons or whatever it may be, we all have fields. We all have electromagnetic fields. We have our own biological electromagnetic field, right? And it engages with different things. It engages with the person next to you. It engages with your child. It engages with your dog or your cat. It engages with the plant, and we also have things that may not be as ben- beneficial, like your computer, your cell phone. They have also a resonance. They have an electromagnetism. So educating people on the fact that they shouldn't put their cell phone in their back pocket, educating people on the fact that they shouldn't have their laptop on their lap, especially men who are trying to have babies, right? So it's in it for me, it's really important that education needs to be even more reinforced, because I see a lot of people who our natural practitioners not talking enough about the different fields we engage in. Every time we walk into a room, even before we walk into a room, our field is engaging with the things that we're about to step into. And I always explain it to people like, sometimes that feeling you get right before you walk into a party, I go, that's your field engaging with other fields. And I go, sometimes you may not even step into it. Let's say you go to a party and you stand outside because the party's an inside outside party. You never get inside. And you find out later that the people inside, um, were having the sniffles or the whatever. And all of a sudden you have the sniffles. That could have been your field engaging with their field of detoxification. You know what I mean? It could be as simple as that. But people have to, there's another unlearning, right? That we are these constructs of physicality that have no other engagement other than if you touch my skin, right? Or if moisturizer goes on my skin, or if you smell fumes of a paint, there's so much more engagement. And bioresonance is helping people understand that there you are, if we want to do it the physics way, your electrons can be expanding out as far as miles and miles, even beyond miles, right? There's even a theory that there's no electrons and there's only one electron, right? And that we're just all surrounded by this one electron, right? And it's just an electron cloud, but makes it look like there's more electrons than one. So I tell people all the time, you may not, let's say your daughter's upset, you are going to take that on. So when we talk about, a lot of the times when I have moms or children or teenagers, or people in relationships that have that have changes in their own levels of stress and emotionality, we have to examine, what's happening around them. Like if you're going to a job and some people around you are miserable, and you're all of a sudden miserable but you don't know why. It could be as simple as, again, you're engaging with their field and being affected by that. And that's not going to make you want to go to your job, and then all of a sudden you go, why, I just don't want to do this job anymore. And it's not like I don't like it, I just don't want to go. And that could very well be one of the reasons why.
Yeah, when bioresonance is one of those like possible explanations, alternative explanations to quote unquote contagion. Something
Right,
you think of something like chickenpox is the first to
right,
come to mind.
right, right,
Chickenpox parties, you've got a kid who's expressing this rash, and so you bring the other kids over, and all of a sudden they are expressing the same thing, and
right,
the the traditional explanation is, well, it's the varicella, and you're
of
spreading
course,
that.
of
But
course.
bioresonance is one of those explanations, correct?
Yes, absolutely. I think a really great example, and it's been moving around quite a lot recently, is there's a man who does a tuning fork, and I actually use this example a multitude of times. Um, there's a man here. There you go. You could play with her now. There's a man holding a tuning fork, and it's 512 hertz, right? And then he has another tuning fork that's 440, and he hits the 512 and does nothing to the 440. But he takes another 440, hits it, and it makes the other 440 vibrate and make a sound. And I actually use it as an example because I think it's very important, because I've played the violin since I was 3.5, and we use tuning forks all the time.
Hmm.
And to me, it makes absolute sense. Like, why is it that you tune an orchestra? I was a concert master, and you tune the orchestra so that instead of it sounding like a multitude of violins, it sounds like one huge violin, right? And the same thing goes to all these quote unquote disease manifestations, which are just, again, different forms of detoxification. When you have one person expressing and everybody else has the same similar resonance, instead of everybody just doing their own thing, you're just going to have everybody do the same thing because they're all on the same frequency.
I have a question about detoxing that has been nagging me, and I figure I'll ask you since you're right here. Is so we have these toxins in our bodies, you know, take your pick. There's billions of them to choose from, right? Let's just call it, say, heavy metal or aluminum or something is in your
Sure.
body. You're trying to get it out, and you jump through all the hoops to, not the hoops, but you initiate protocols to initiate detoxing,
Sure.
be it sweat, snot, what goes in the toilet, etc.
Sure.
Is it a one-to-one relationship that that aluminum is literally in your snot, or it's in the toilet, or it's coming out your skin? Does it work that way, that literally?
That's a really good question, and I want to believe so, but it's sometimes not that simple. You, the body detoxifies or excretes or drains um, whenever it's capable and when it feels the strongest, right? That's my four and a half
That's the
year
four
old.
and a half year old.
Yay.
um,
It's
It's a
incredible.
family affair.
I love it.
hold on,
Okay.
my daughter, my
Right. Who's the boss?
my daughter. I didn't even know my daughter knew how to use the baby monitor
Amazing.
for me. Give me one
No
second.
problem.
Oh, that's hysterical. Hello?
Where does she live, Ben?
That's a good question. You've you got your hands full.
Oh no, she's a smart one. It's beyond, like, I don't remember being that smart.
Yeah.
I don't. I was smart, but
Well, it is funny. I'm sitting here watching you with your little newborn on your lap, and just the download of information that child is getting just from it's
yeah,
incredible.
no, we have conversations like that. Oh, my husband and I, because he's on the same page as me since day one. You
Yep.
know, I've
Yep.
known him for almost 15 years now, and he, he was just, when we had a conversation the first time, he was just like, "Oh my God, someone else that gets it. Someone else that can talk at this level."
Incredible.
So don't, if you were sitting in the car, this would be every day for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you'd
Yeah.
be in the car. Every day, all breakfast, lunch, dinner, every day, every day, every day.
Amazing.
Yeah, terrain by osmosis.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Um, but in terms of detoxification and or drainage or excretion, your body doesn't want to eliminate something that's going to make you sick again,
Sure.
right? So it's going to do it at a time.
Or someone else for that matter.
Right, right, right. Um, it's gonna do it at a time where it feels the strongest, right? And I always give an example to clients because they never understand. Like, I went on vacation, I swear I didn't eat that much bad. I didn't, I barely drank alcohol. I was relaxed the whole time. I even lost a couple pounds of, I was so happy. And then 2 weeks later, they're like, "Oh, I've got this cold and this, that." And I'm like, your body was getting sun and sand and getting all these things to uplift you. You feel great mentally, physically, emotionally. And your body was like, "Oh, great. This is great. You're feeling strong. Let's eliminate some stuff.
Yep.
Let's clean the closets now." You know what I mean? And that's where I feel sometimes. And I have a book in the works, but that it's hopefully coming out at the end of the year. But the second book is more of a, like, a how to. It's in understanding that exact question you just asked, because I feel like a lot of people are programmed again to the idea that they have to force themselves to detox, that they're not, their body's not knowledgeable enough to do it, so they need some sort of program or cleanse or special water or whatever it may be. You don't need anything other than fresh, clean water. Like, I like the structured water idea because it's like you drinking from a waterfall. So, that, yes. But in terms of, like, special water with special, like, vitamins in it, that doesn't suit me. But the idea is, once you give your body the sunlight and the fresh air and the clean water and nourishment, without the toxins, without, being constipated, making sure you're excreting, your body will do it. And eventually, if that flow continues, will excrete that arsenic, excrete that aluminum, excrete that stuff in small amounts, without you even knowing,
Mm,
like as long as you're not stressed out and your body's all clenched up,
right.
and or emotional or psychological stuff or whatever it may be, your body will just like slowly but surely, clean it
It's
out.
almost
And
like a homeopathic dose of detox. Just like
right, exactly, exactly, exactly. And it might be in your snot, it might be in your, your tears, it might be in your urine, and but it you need that flow.
yeah.
You need the positives in and the yuck out.
And of course,
Um,
that speaks to the idea of just throwing the band-aid culture that we live in, where I'm sick, I need to like up my vegetables or my mineral. Well, obviously, we should just always be eating this way, so it's a
right,
constant flow of
right,
getting the
right.
right nutrition in, so your body's always optimized.
Hmm.
Correct.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then you think how many people out there get themselves into a state where they are finally healthy and they've achieved a better balance internally, and then they have the symptoms of a detox, and then they're throwing medicines at it to suppress those symptoms, and then they're just back on this vicious sort of downward spiral.
That's right. It's the merry-go-round that, there's a great gif of that where it's like a person hanging onto the merry-go-round and just, being dragged along the merry-go-round. It's my favorite because it's like, oh, but you just started and then you're suppressing and then you're going to feel better and suppress it again when it comes out and back again over and over.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of work to extract ourselves from that paradigm.
Yeah, no, it is because again, it's even like cartoons, it's just this incessant need to either expedite a process or to force a process, and it's we've never really accomplished the idea of just having faith in the body's capabilities. And that's the reinforcement of not only in our educational system, our entire medical system is this idea that the body has some sort of stupidity. Like it's just, it can't. So we need to help it because it can't.
Right.
Yeah. Dr. Murray, where is spirituality or higher power? Where does that sit in your life and your practice?
Oh, it's very important. I mean, for me, it's like I said, early on, I see that the sparkles of the microzymas or they're you can't see the microzymas, they're super micro, but when they're in their more they have three forms before they turn into bacteria. So right before they turn into bacteria, well, I shouldn't say right before. They're bigger, so you can see them, and that's that sparkle that you see in the dark field microscope.
Hmm.
And to me, the fact that they are still these unknown things that are amorphous, right, and that they are needed for everything to actually exist. That for me is when you see that, when you know that there's an intelligence that we'll never understand. We don't have the capacity to understand. We can try to get there, right? With how we talk about the engagement, the environment, and the leaf in a plant, and how I can make a baby and all that stuff, right? But to me, it's more of understanding that there is an intelligence in everything, and you have to constantly bow down to that to understand that that is so wise that it knows sometimes more than you do. And it goes back to the initial conversation of being humbled. And that's what humbles me all the time is that the best I can do is always try to help it, help people let it work through them and bring it out of them, empower them to understand that they are connected to that. No matter if you believe in your a religious God or whether you believe in Mother Nature or you're a Wiccan, it doesn't matter. There's a power within you. Your existence is an expression of that power because you wouldn't be here if that were the case, right? So it folds into I don't talk about it in a religious sense. I don't really emphasize it hugely to every person that walks in my door for help although there are people, that need that type of, support and understanding of having faith in their body, because faith is a wonderful word that I feel needs to be emphasized more, even with natural practitioners, to have faith that your body does know. Just, and it's not blind faith. You see it, right? You cut yourself, you bleed, it scabs, it goes away. You didn't have to look at it and stare at it and concentrate on for your body to heal. It just does, which means that you have to have faith that that process exists for all the different functions of the body.
That's so beautifully said. I think that lesson right there is one that I hope resonates with the listener and the world beyond. Dr. Mari, what are some of your more memorable success stories?
Oh, so many. That's why I love what I do, right? Um, my favorites are a woman who came in with an inoperable brain tumor. She had a couple years, but we used a lot of pleo products, a lot of raw milk drinking. She came in with the brain tumor, couldn't walk, wheelchaired, um, very dizzy, all sorts of things. And this was 9 years ago. She's still alive today. There's no tumor in her brain, and she walks with a cane. So, it's, you could call it a miracle, or you could call it, you just let the power of, your whole body working together and removing whatever garbage, that's what happened, and that those are one of my fondest ones, is having a woman who is told she's going to die in less than 2 years and in a wheelchair, and having a nurse help her to, she's now doing everything on her own, and she walks with a cane, and she's still alive
Did
today.
did she do any other form of therapy, chemo or radiation?
Nope,
Nothing.
nothing. It was an inoperable one. Radiation, it was more by the corpus callosum, like in the center of her brain, so radiation wouldn't have really done anything. So she did nothing. She just subscribed to she was a very religious Christian. So she just, in the hands of God, essentially, for her. And I said, well, if that's what you believe, then we're just going to get that energy right through you and make it come out with all the different things we'll do. So it was actually really helpful that she didn't do anything, because then I didn't have to fight against any type of more detoxification of more toxic material. So I I subscribe it even more to that, the fact that I wasn't fighting with her body as well. All the couples that come that have had problems conceiving, those are always memorable, because you help bring a new life into the world. Um, What's another good one? A couple of couples I had. One of the partners were supposedly diagnosed with HIV, and so they wanted to. I had a couple of them wanting to have a baby, but afraid, this, that, and the other. So it was a re-education of the whole virus conversation and germ theory conversation. So that was very memorable as well, because you have a baby coming into the world that supposedly doesn't have this diagnosis, and the partner doesn't have a diagnosis. So again, re-education, that type of stuff. And a lot of autistic children that I've helped. When you have a mom who's has a 2, 3, 4, 7 year old not speaking, or being told that this is going to be the way things are where they're going to be nonverbal, or angry, or smashing their head against the wall. When you turn that around and you have a mom holding the baby up in FaceTime, going, "Hey, look at Dr. Arce," and you have the child waving hello, saying things, and you know being able to do their ABCs when they were completely nonverbal. It's touching. It's again, it's just a satisfaction knowing that you're progressing and learning and doing the right things for people.
Yeah, it's clear you're on the right path. So tell us a little bit more about this book that we can expect.
Yes, I'm very excited about it. I actually wanted to write it about ten years ago. and, and then finally, when I had a lot of free time during 2020, um, I was pushed by good friends of mine who were got educated by me during 2020, in terms of what was happening, and they were like, "You really need to write this down because people are going to believe that, and they should be believing what you're saying." So I really, my first was only, I think, 2.5. So she was still nap time, that type of thing. So it was the only time I got to write was when she was taking her long nap of 2 hours, and it would be every day, just typing away or, recording. And then my husband would be transcribing at 10 p.m. at night. And it's basically a little bit of history because, again, I'm a history lover. So it's a little bit of understanding what happened with Béchamp and Pasteur, and an explanation more so in history of why we saw diseases in history, right? Like it was the tanning toxins of leather in the rivers, and or it was some sort of toxins coming from fumes from industry. Typhoid Mary wasn't a typhoid bacterium, but rather all the stuff in the Hudson River, and they were getting the big ice cubes from there. Like it was I really went into explaining all the different aspects of health historically, and big name people like Florence Nightingale talking about hygienics, talking about fresh air and clean water and sunlight to help heal people, and so that's part of the book, to explain historical issues, right? And then I go into pleomorphism and explaining it to the point where, and I'm a big advocate of being able to explain something to a child. Like to me, my mom was an electron microscopist. She was a hematologist. She was a biology teacher, natural life science teacher. So she taught little kids. She taught like 10, 12-year-olds, and she always said to me, if you can't explain it to a little kid, then you don't really fully understand it, right? So I'm big on, I need to be able to explain pleomorphism to the point that you could teach a child. And this book, in the section of the book, is all about learning and understanding the microzymas or the protists, or this, whatever you want to call them. Um, and understanding how they're involved in our life and how they're involved in what we call disease, and why they're important. And then the end part of the book is more about, again, the empowerment, that we have to remove the idea of catching, of 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 calling it dis-ease, that we're not fighting a cold, like it's reframing your brain to understanding that we have to work with the body's detoxification, that you have the power to be healthy, that you don't have to choose to be sick. So it's a lot of empowerment at the end part, because you're getting all this information about where disease is coming from, and you're getting all this information of pleomorphism. I wanted to just at least end with, what you can do a little bit on how to incorporate all that information for yourself.
Wonderful. And that's coming out, you think, hopefully.
Hopefully by the end of this year. I have to do a little bit more editing. I have a wonderful editor. So yeah, I have to do a little bit more editing. I took a hiatus from it only because maternity leave, end of pregnancy was, I was just slowing down and not wanting to do too much brainiac stuff. So I'm going to get back into the bandwagon of editing that. Meanwhile, I'm actually putting aside a second part to that first book, with more details, as I said earlier, more details on really scrutinizing, like how to discern whether a detox program is actually helping you or hurting you, to understand what it is to detox, and again, reframing the idea that detox is not a fad word, it's not a structured process, that it's the dynamic of the body to excrete. So really educating people on what detox is and how to utilize it during like a convalescent period, because convalescence is a lost art,
Mm,
like we don't convalesce long enough, we don't convalesce at all,
mhm.
essentially. We don't really give credence or power to the ability that the body has in order to heal. Therefore we don't really take the time to give it that space, right? So convalescence is also really important in that secondary book, because we need to rest during these times.
Well, those sound like remarkable resources. We look forward to seeing those. Dr. Murray, we're sort of getting towards the end here. I don't want to take up too much of your time. Question that we ask all our guests: what are your non-negotiables? The daily habits you do to tend to your terrain.
As I said earlier, so most importantly is I have my raw milk. But really truly is getting sun, whether it's a cloudy day or not, getting some sunlight in the house, or going outside, getting those beams on you. Um, that's super important. Fresh air, super important, whether you're in an apartment in the city, trying to get some filters on, just get fresh air. Take the time, if you are in the city, to go to some place that has greenery. Like I am, it's really important that we surround ourselves, like we take walks in the park or things like that. Some of our farmers markets are actually in the park, which is really nice. So we sit and we have a picnic. That's a non-negotiable for me, to have fresh air, sunlight. Drinking clean water, very important for us. And then have taking time to really kind of connect with one another, right? Like having that picnic in the park, having good conversations, de-stressing as much as possible. Like I don't take any of my stress with me. I box it. I'm very compartmentalized. So, you know, m- when I'm with my daughters, it's all about laughter and joking and experiencing those moments, and that's a non-negotiable, that I need to have laughter. Absolutely, 100% all the time.
I love it. And where can the listener learn more about you?
I'm a dud when it comes to social media. I have I'm just getting into it. So even though I've had a Twitter account, although it's now called X, but I've had a Twitter account since 2009, but I've only jumped on it in the last like 6 months. And social media, I'm terrible, in Instagram, but tidbits, you'll get tidbits of me. My husband calls me a recluse. He's like, you're this person who people come to see. They don't even like know you or anything, and you just help them. And he's like, you got to get more out there so people can get your knowledge without. I was like, well, but that's why I wrote a book, because but you can find me on Facebook. I put some things here and there, not really a lot. Instagram, a little more knowledge. Twitter now, because I've engaged more. You'll see tidbits of articles that I post. My websites, I have two websites. I have more of my formal website, Natural Care of Westchester, which is the business. And then I have my more personal website, which is terraindoctor.com. I have a blog there that I post once a week on a topic. So you could find me anywhere. You could catch me anywhere, but I'm actually very social in that if you decide that you want to give me a call or text me, I'm all about like, I'll speak to you for 15, 20 minutes. Not a problem. I'm really that. I'm more of a one-to-one engagement type of people. I'm like the old fashioned, I don't do that social media thing, like I try to, but I'm really bad at it.
Humble and accessible. Love it. It's a great combo. Well, Dr. Mario Arce, thank you so much for joining us on the Train Theory podcast. It's been a
Absolutely. It's
pleasure.
my pleasure, guys. Thank you so much, Ben and Mike. Thank you. Wonderful. You guys, your podcast is amazing.
Thank
Thank
you
you
so
so
much.
much.
Yeah, Mikey Mon, welcome to the after party in the Pineal Room.
Being caffeine free hasn't tamped you down at all, Benjamin.
Ah, that was so forced. That was every last I had.
Come on.
Ah,
No, you're a natural. You don't need that shit.
folks, we are both Mike and I are, I mean, going on 2 weeks caffeine free. So we took our lessons from Mr. Christoph and we just said, okay, let's do it. We're gonna give this a shot. And here we are. We're still standing,
Still in the pineal room.
still in the pineal room.
Yeah.
Well, all right, we're gonna talk about Dr. Mari, but first let's just check in. How are you doing being completely caffeine free? You're like a week plus now, right?
Yeah, it's funny. I didn't like write a little mark in my calendar or anything to sort of take take notes or anything. I'm just sort of winging it. But I think it's about a week, and
Yeah.
today is the first day I don't feel. Um, I don't. What I want to choose my word carefully.
Complete garbage.
Sure, let's go with that. I feel like I'm achieving ballast. now, and about a weekend, which is sort of what I thought. I thought by the end of September, I'd probably start to feel that this was a normal way to feel. But yeah, the first week was a slog. Plus, August was such a grind, and there was just so much going on that like to throw that on my plate in the midst of all I've just been through. It was a lot. So I've been just sort of like trying to remind myself to go easy and like take it one breath at a time, as
Yeah,
Dr. Rob would say.
one breath at a time.
How are you?
I decided, so I'm just back from a pretty epic trip to the Grand Canyon, and the day I left, it was like August 31st or something. So this is like right after the hoot.
Right.
So 2 days after coming back from the hoot, I had to pack up, fly out of Manchester Airport at like it was like a 6 a.m. flight. So I decided that morning, this is it. I'm not going to have any caffeine when I wake
The
up.
morning of your
And
flight.
the morning of my flight, and just went that entire day, didn't drink caffeine. Then I was like, all right, I'm on it now. I'm heading into a canyon. I'm not going to have my phone on at all.
Yeah.
I know there's going to be coffee and like tea options, but I'm just going to give this a go. Like, what better time
Amazing.
than when I don't have any work to do? I'm just going to be like floating down a river and swimming in a river and seeing this epic landscape. And
Yeah, yeah.
it was awesome. I mean, it was awesome just because of where I was. I think it was a perfect environment
Yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
drop caffeine. However, on the day I got, like, the first day of work, full work after getting back, which was really just 3 days ago, Monday.
Right.
Combination of being like jet lagged. I didn't sleep that much on this trip,
Yeah.
and then having like a full, just like boom, we're back in it. I was, I was pretty bad, and I was close, man. I was really close to being like, you know what, I need, I, I need the mate. But I sat with it. It was like this. It was the whole painkiller thing.
Right.
I'm gonna feel this pain, and the fact that I feel this way really tells me how badly I need to be off this,
Yeah.
or maybe how important it is to experience being off of it. So made it through, got like a couple really good nights of sleep, just sort of back in my nice routine, like morning sun and
Yeah.
all that fun stuff.
Good.
Um, and I think today, like you, like today, I feel pretty good, feel pretty energized naturally.
And you were able to keep the headaches at bay just by going cold turkey like that.
Didn't have any headaches. And again, I think part of it was because I was on the Colorado River in this beautiful space.
Yeah.
I was able to just like jump in the river whenever I wanted to, and that just, it was like a natural whatever.
Incredible.
Um, yeah. So here's where we are, and I don't know about you. Well, first of all, the prediction that you thought like by the end of September, I actually think it's going to be a longer process.
Right.
I think that given the number of years that I've been drinking caffeine regularly, I think it's going to be a long process of like working this out of my, mind, body, spirit. And I'm prepared for it. I'm like, okay, I'm going to be in this for the long haul, because I think it might take, I'm ready for it to take a while
Yeah.
before I really start reaping the benefits of being off of this.
I think that's intelligent. We all want that quick solution, that quick fix. Like, oh, I kicked it, now I'm fine. But I think you're right. It's gonna be a long slog and
Yeah.
a beautiful sort of elevation over a longer arc.
Yep.
I
Yep.
agree. I
So
see it
we're
too.
in it. We're in it. All right. Dr. Mari.
Ah, what a beautiful woman. Just a fountain of knowledge. I loved how down to earth she is and how confident she is, and it's really interesting because I think you and I both bring this up a lot. This seesaw of frugivore, plant based, and the Weston A. Price healthy fat sort of tug of war, and I just it's really interesting that I'm still so confused about that. But when you hear someone like her um, back it up with her results, it just really seems to resonate. I gotta say, when she brought up glioblastoma, it's like tears well up in my eye for
Yeah.
your family's history. And to hear her like these success stories of people being able to detox from that, it's really something.
Yeah, I know. I sort of had to bite my inner lip to keep from, yeah, the waterworks. Yeah, it's easy, man, it's easy to look back and go, what if, like what could have
Right,
been, and
right,
you
right,
can
right.
just operate, you can just, you function on what you know now,
Yep.
or what you think you know now. And that's an impossible decision for, like a family to make, parents to make. Imagine like your kid has that diagnosis. It's it's one thing if you're an adult with that diagnosis and
Right.
you're like, I'm going to go this route. I'm not going to do radiation operation. I mean, in her case, it was inoperable, but
Right. Right.
her options were limited. But we put our faith in the people that and the people that we've seen to take care of our health. To oversee our health. We put our faith in these folks from an early age, and when they say this is the best course of action, you take it.
Yeah.
Um, and that's what that was. Learning experience. You
I
know,
mean, in many ways, I think that's how you ended up here
very
doing
much so.
doing this podcast.
Very much so. Yeah. I think a lot about that. I think a lot about that journey and Josh's journey. And uh yeah. I mean, I've said it before. I've said it to you. I think I've said it in this after party that if I were given a cancer diagnosis, like the first thing I would do is check into a Costa Rica water fast retreat.
Yeah.
Like that. Any significant kind of diagnosis, that would be my first course of action
Yeah.
based on everything we've like learned along this journey.
Yeah.
Or though actually now it might just be give Dr. Mari a call. Yeah, because I think there's more to it. I think like fasting is one protocol, but I think there is something to be said for continuing to nourish your body
Yeah.
in the right ways. Like you can continue to put food in your body, make sure that the right foods, avoid the wrong foods, and then just like get everything else right. It doesn't I don't think it necessarily has to be a water fast. And I think there might be circumstances where the water fast might not be the best option.
Sure.
Like it might just be too drastic. But I think in that instance, I might actually consult a person like Dr. Mari and just say, hey, this is what I'm thinking. Anyway, that's,
Yeah.
this is all hypothetical, but
She makes
you're
a
right.
strong case for nutrition, 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 which is sort of part and parcel of always be detoxing. It's like they're two
Yeah, I
sides
thought
of
of
the
that.
same coin.
I thought of that when you started talking about detoxing, the always be detoxing thing, and I guess that is the case. Like your body will do it. Your body will always just naturally do it. You just need to create the environment where it's optimized to do it.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and then don't freak out when it starts detoxing and you show some symptoms of something,
Because
um,
that's the
e-
goal.
e.g., a skin rash.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm actually I'm like kind of on that topic. I'm sort of bracing myself because if I cutting out caffeine, if caffeine is a
Sure.
poison, is a toxin, and we cut
Sure.
that out,
Yeah.
and we're creating a better environment for continued detoxing, like I just gotta be ready. You got to be ready. Like some nasty shit might happen. We just got to sort of brace ourselves and be ready
Certainly.
and
Yeah.
know that it's going to be better on the other side.
Yeah. And was this your first time uh meeting Mari?
Yeah, so there'd been some interactions. Just actually, I don't even know if I directly interacted with her in the Terrain Family Telegram channel, of which I'm a part, and will often pop in just to read. I just saw her. She's a fairly frequent contributor there, and it's always really insightful observations and a lot of conversations around pleomorphism and the microzyma. And it's like, wow, this she really just knows so much. We got to get her on. And glad that we did. So that was really the only interaction was through the Telegram.
Well done. Yeah, no, I have to have so many great notes here, but they all seem to um, validate this pleomorphic phenomenon and to support it with nutrition as a means of detox is it's just compounding what I think we've been where this path has been leading us to. So it's just nice to get that validation again. I loved her
Isn't it
idea of French fries with beef tallow. It's like, you don't have to not eat French fries, but just like cook them in some beef tallow. It's the best.
100%?
Yeah.
100%. And didn't like there were some fast food joints like didn't McDonald's used to cook their fries in beef tallow
But,
back in the day? I'm fairly certain that was the case.
yeah. Let's not go there. But that could be.
Well, we're not literally going to go there, but it is interesting that, some of the earlier forms of this fast food might have
Sure.
actually been
Sure.
cooked in something as healthy as beef tallow, and obviously that went out the window.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. Isn't it fascinating? I my mind is reeling over the fact that something as foundational, as fundamental to biology as the microzyma and pleomorphism is still so fringe and not accepted by like mainstream science.
You know what it made me think, Ben? It in this culture that seems to, in a manner of speaking, want to kill God. It's like they just want, you know, they just don't. God is out of the conversation in like enlightened modern time, quote unquote enlightened, progressive modernism. It seems right.
Yeah.
Um, but pleomorphic seems to have a godlike quality. It's like this. It's this intelligence that we'll never understand. It's sort of like directing everything, and yet we can't even really see it or know how it works. And it seems part and parcel of that. It's just like not letting God into the room.
I think, and I 100% agree with you, and that's why I wanted to bring up spirituality.
I'm glad you did. Right.
And a strong suspicion where she was going to take that, and I think there's a lot more we could have talked about. One of my questions that we didn't ask her was like, how do you fix this broken like healthcare system, sick care system, and after her response about spirituality, I think like that's a big piece, is reinserting the higher power, the reverence for something bigger than yourself, uh, into our lives, into all of our lives. And I think that I don't, man, this sounds hyperbolic, but I really feel that atheism is dangerous.
Yeah.
I think not, I think it's dangerous to the individual, and I think it's destructive to the individual. And I'm going to maintain that. Like that's where my head is at, and it's been at for a little while. I've never articulated it like this, but I believe that.
I think that's well said. And the individual, but the culture too. Like, how could you
And the
live in an
culture, right, of
atheistic
course.
culture? I
Yeah,
think
you
you're
extrapolate
looking
that.
at it. We're looking at it.
Yes. Yes, I believe we are.
Yeah.
I believe we are. And like Dr. Murray, I think you don't need to, pigeonhole within the dogma of a specific like religion, but I do believe that some reverence and for something bigger than yourself,
The,
some life force
yeah,
bigger than yourself.
she pointed to like the indigenous understanding that there's a complexity of existence that we can never and should never even maybe even strive to understand. Let it
Correct.
be.
Embrace the unknowing.
Yeah.
Like embrace the mystery. Accept that some things will simply be a mystery and we're not equipped to understand everything.
Yeah.
I think that there's a real freedom in that.
Agreed. So she's a beautiful, like, she straddles those two worlds of like the humility to embrace the unknown and having some really like tangible results from the people she's worked with via nutrition.
Right. Yeah. Embrace the unknown and the unknowing, but still like stock your bookshelves with books that were written prior to the 1800s.
Yeah, and drink raw milk
Hungry
every day.
and drink raw milk every day. Yeah. She is a huge raw milk advocate.
I know.
I went looking for raw milk yesterday. I couldn't find any. It made me think I really got to get back on this and stock my fridge with it.
I've never once in my life had raw milk, ever.
Or,
I gotta find
that's,
it.
well, in the words of William Wallace, that's something we'll have to remedy now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Uh, have you gone on the hunt for it? Oh, well, you're not doing dairy, so
Ruthie doesn't do dairy, but I do dairy. I'm gonna find it.
okay.
I haven't tried that hard to find it. I know it can't be too far.
Well, here's one of the reasons why I'm really hot to trot to stock my fridge with it right now, because I really want steamed raw milk with the dandelion,
Mm.
because
Mm.
that is a coffee for me. That's a coffee replacement. That dandelion blend, the
Yeah,
dandy
it's
blend,
so good.
so good, and it's got chicory in it. Because she mentioned that, I wanted to ask her, Dr. Murray, if she's off just coffee or all caffeine. How long she's been? Man, we got to get her back on when her book releases.
Yeah, yeah,
We
yeah.
should bring her back on to talk about her book, but
Good.
we could dive into that. But that dandy blend in some like warmed up milk
Mm.
is a coffee replacement. The
Boom.
taste of it, anyway.
No, I know that's been my surrogate is the
Yeah.
dandy blend, and I've you've heard me talk about. I add a little mushroom powder and some shilajit and
What's
some
your
coconut
base?
oil, but I do put half and half in, which and if you're Jason Christoph, you're drinking pus. It's like I can't pour like pasteurized milk into anything now. Like fucking
Yeah,
Christoph,
pus drinker. You're just another pus drinker, Michael.
brutal.
Yeah, it is brutal. I don't even know why you're
But
on
it's
this podcast. Pus drinking Dr. Miranda.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll embrace it a
Um,
little while longer.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get you some raw milk. Let's get on the hunt for some raw milk. It does make me wonder, just as there is a findaspring.org,
Yep, it
there
can't be
really
that
should
hard to
be like
find.
one central database for finding raw milk.
Probably my local Weston A. Price chapter leader, Dina Falcone, would know where to find raw milk.
I bet she would.
Yeah, yeah.
I bet she would. All right. Well, we're on the raw milk hunt. Michael, it is great to see you again, sir.
That was a long little passage that we were not podcasting.
Correct. Yeah, because of the hoot, and then I was away.
Yeah,
It's nice to be back. We've got a whole bunch of fun guests lined up.
and a few to line up. I really want to get Victoria on, who came
Yes.
all the way across the country from Washington State to attend the hoot because she's a terrain theory listener, and that was so meaningful uh, to me, and I think you as well. So let's
Yeah.
get her on to talk about her experience.
I'll reach out to Victoria to see if she wants to hop on.
Yeah, great.
Yeah. Shout out, Victoria. It was great to meet you in person and spend a little time at the hoot. Very grateful for your presence.
Yeah, the hoot was so great, and we have it's like it happens and it's gone. It's like poof, it's such like a monumental synergy of energy, like all these people coming from all over, and more of our terrain family coming and being part of it. And it's the fact that that you did that big Grand Canyon trip, but you still got your ass to the hoot was so meaningful for me because I know summers are busy and you got a lot going on. Uh, but it happened. It really did happen. Also, like the post hoot malaise for me, it lasts a long time. It
Yeah.
really does. I can't be too proud to admit.
I
So
can sense it in you, sir.
so
I can sense it.
it's nice to invoke the glory that was the hoot, and it's come and it's gone, and may it come again.
May it come again, and may it welcome even more of the terrain family.
Yeah, well, and since we're talking about it before we wrap, I'm starting to wrap my brain around the winter hoot, and it's become the template for a winter hoot, which is much smaller. It's mostly music all day Saturday. Sunday's just a farewell sing along for folks who spent the night. And Friday, we've done dinner and a movie, usually a documentary, followed by a panel discussion or a Q&A. And I really think I want to show a geoengineering film
Yep.
that the folks at our geoengineeringage.org have recommended and have been um, championing, and maybe get Dr. Rob back down to lead that panel or do the Q&A, and of course some breath work. So that's the wheels that are turning hoot wise in my head right now.
Well, that'll get me to the winter hoot.
Yeah, well,
I've
I'll need you there. You'd be integral for that.
I've been to a number of summer hoots now. I'm on a nice little streak that won't be broken,
Yep.
but I haven't attended a winter hoot yet. So I think that would be a must for
That would
me.
be if I'm gonna stick my neck out like that, I would need your support for sure. But you know what? The winter hoot is tons of fun. There's always tons of kids there. Grayson would have a blast. I mean, it's different, but it's a shokin. It's magical.
It's magical. He had a blast this year. He met so many new little friends.
Yep.
Nate the Great,
Yep.
Mr. Chris
Yep.
was there. Oh
Yep.
God, you guys put on an incredible festival once again.
Yeah, it was a good one. Thank you. Thank you.
And finally, for the first time, I went in the waters.
Yes.
I can't believe it took me this long.
Had you never actually been down there before?
I'd never actually been down to that swimming hole.
Can you believe that spot?
And then once I went in that first morning, I think I went back like 3 more times that day. I'm not even kidding. I was like, yeah, I'm like kind of hot. I'm gonna go swimming.
Yeah.
It's absolutely magical. The water is cold,
Yep.
and it's like almost too cold. It's almost like at that point of coldness where you're just like, I'm not gonna last in here, and you
It's
just
cold plunge
breathe.
temperature.
It's cold plunge, proper cold plunge temperature, and you can breathe through it, and you definitely feel it,
Yeah.
and you feel it all day long. Oh, what a way to start the morning.
That Saturday morning with Dr. Rob and I don't know, 15 or 20 of us who were all in for the cold plunge, that was a legendary day in my life that I will never forget.
Same,
All,
same. And a
all those
shout out to
like-minded
Dr.
people.
Rob.
Yeah.
Just shout out to Dr. Rob for finally being able to interact with you in person. You've been on the show twice. To interact with you in person, to do a cold plunge, to see you lead breathwork 2 mornings in a row from the
Mhm.
main stage. What a treat,
With
and what
such
an
grace.
individual.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah,
More of that.
more of that. Yes, more of that, please, in our life. More of that, and some more raw milk, some more Dandy Blend. and more energy in replacing the caffeine, the fake caffeine poison energy.
That's it.
That's it. All right, folks. Nothing you heard here should be taken as medical advice because neither Mike nor I are medical experts. We are podcast experts, doctors of podcasting. In fact, remember that you are light, you are love, you are in the hands of God, and you are your primary healthcare provider. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next one.